Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a Thursday edition of On Cue. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. We're coming at you live inside the friendly confines of the SR 1029 FM The Game remote studios. As always, get social with me. Very easy to do. You can hashtag On Cue on X at Rich Q on Q. And of course, on IG, TikTok at Rich Q on the mic. And don't forget, we're on Kicks, we're on Rumble. Millions. We're on the YouTube channels, SR 1029 FM The Game. And it's very, very, very easy to get involved in the conversation. As I mentioned, don't forget to download the AUDACY app and check out Coastal Sports Digital Network, SR 1029 FM The Game. Hope everyone had a wonderful Sports Wednesday. We are getting over the hump on this Thursday, the 26th of February 2026. As I mentioned, get in on the conversation. Lloyd Vance will join me in about 45 minutes. NFL. We'll mix in a little light night in the association. Everyone's getting all giddy over the NFL Combine. We've got Tony Dungy out with NBC. We got PFF being sold. Looks like they hit the friggin' lottery. A couple trades already coming down. That'll become official when the new calendar year flips in the NFL. Richardson went out in Indianapolis. I mean, there is so much going on right now in the NFL. This is why I always say the NFL never, ever stops. The NFL never sleeps. The NFL decides we're never going to take a break. Now, yesterday, if you tuned in, we talked a little bit about some of the quarterbacks in the NFL, and I gave you pressure points with 3 to 5 teams. We're going to carry that conversation. We'll bridge it into today's show. But NFL wise, this is kind of what's trending, as I mentioned before. We'll get to the NFLPA, the survey that has Miami ranking first, Pittsburgh worst in the NFL. A.J. Brown rumors with the Eagles, potential trade heating up. Maxx Crosby with the Raiders, potential trade heating up. The agent of one Anthony Richardson has come out and basically said, hey, the Colts have granted Richardson an okay to seek a trade. This is your perfect prime example of over-evaluation, bad evaluation, piss-poor evaluation, not getting it right with the quarterbacking position in the NFL, how the Colts absolutely reached for this kid, not even close to being a top 5 draft pick, having a handful of games in college. We'll get into the Jets and the Titans. So if you're actually just tuning in, the Jets trade Jermaine Johnson to the Titans for T'Vondre Sweat. So that move, if you kind of break it down, it can't be processed until the start of the league year, which is in a couple weeks, March 11th. This is now, if you think about this, the move that the Jets are making thus far during the offseason, it's kind of like a protracted, right, teardown, right? Because the Jets had a really good defense, and now they're starting to trade away everyone, right? Quentin Williams, Sauce Gardner, both former first-round draft picks back in November. 8 of the Jets' 11th first-round picks from 2015 to 2022 have been traded. This puts more pressure on who? Aaron Glenn, to figure out a way to get it done this coming season. Now, yesterday, we gave you 4 or 5 quarterbacks. We gave you 4 or 5 teams. Today, we'll carry over that conversation. I got 3 to 5 head coaches that I believe are absolutely dead man walking coming into 2026. I'm looking up and down and I'm saying to myself, oh my goodness, these guys are not going to last. So we're going to go heavy in the NFL today. We will mix in some NBA. As I mentioned, not a bad night in the association with some marquee games, the Lakers, the Suns. You've got the Rockets and the Magic, the Spurs taking on a bad Nets squad. The Sixers back in action. They'll take on the Heat. Knicks have the night off. They'll be back in action tomorrow. So we'll get into the NBA. We gave you some updated MVP odds yesterday, and I kind of hedged it with be careful with some of these players because if they miss a couple more games, they're not going to be eligible to win the award. And time permitting, we'll throw in a little baseball. So NFL Combine, I know everyone gets very giddy about the NFL Combine, right? It makes or breaks players when that's not necessarily the case. It really isn't. I've said this for years. I've maintained this for years. there are certain players that blew people away at the NFL Combine, and they never really translated into very good pros. And then there were those that couldn't even sprint and run, i.e., a Tom Brady. And oh, by the way, the rest is history. Look how they turned out. But it's fun to watch. You know, you get wall to wall NFL action. The draft is right around the corner. So we'll go through the draft order as well. And we'll start looking at some of these needs and wants by some of these teams. But I think really today, I kind of wanted to start with you might see some big movement with some all pro type of players. And I know it's easy for us to say from where we're sitting, our vantage point, that the Eagles won't trade an A.J. Brown. The Raiders won't trade a Maxx Crosby. Listen, you do this long enough. Players are expendable in the NFL. They really are. They're absolutely expendable. And I think now teams realize we can have some depth at that position. We can add to that position. We can build around certain positions. Like the guys that get paid in the NFL are your edge rusher, your shutdown corner, your lockdown corner, your tackle, your left tackle protecting the quarterback's blind side, and the quarterback. We don't really have to pay wide receivers anymore. We don't really have to pay tight ends anymore. I mean, we do, but we don't really have to pay running backs. Like DB, lockdown corner, tackle, edge rusher. That's pretty much, I mean, think about this, right? You're protecting the quarterback, you're setting up the offense, and then defensively, you're making plays when you have to and you get into the quarterback. Those guys are the pronounced positions in the NFL. And a guy like Maxx Crosby, who I think is a phenomenal player. Maxx Crosby is a hell of a player. Maxx Crosby, to me, if Al Davis was still alive, it's Maxx Crosby is a Raider. Maxx Crosby's only 28. He's in his prime. And I know that there are a lot of, teams that would love to acquire a Maxx Crosby. And who knows what the asking price is going to be. And I understand why he wants to get out of Vegas, but I've also cautioned, that sentiment. I kind of hedged it with this. You're going to draft Fernando Mendoza, number one. That it's just a done deal. You're playing in a division where Kansas City's getting older. The Chargers never seem to get out of their own way. And Denver, who knows, maybe they take a step back because they arrived too soon. You've got cap money. You've got a tight end. You've got a running back. You're drafting a quarterback. To me, that's a new era of Las Vegas Raiders football. And oh, by the way, you brought in former Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak to be the new head coach. Oh, by the way, you still have the number one draft pick. So I guess my point is maybe, you can't tell a player what to do, right? Because at the end of the day, they're going to do what's best for them, their career, and their family, first and foremost. So if you're 27, 28, and you've been on a perennial loser, and now you kind of see maybe there's a silver lining, maybe there's a little bit of sunlight coming through these clouds, maybe you want to hang on to what you have and you want to build and you want to turn that franchise, that program into a winner. Now, remember, what did the Cowboys do last offseason? They took a player that's very good, but I believe is equally overrated in Micah Parsons. They dealt him to Green Bay. Obviously, he got hurt, and it hurt that defense going forward, right? We've seen big-time players get moved. Sauce Gardner not on the level of those two players that I mentioned. But, again, will they trade Crosby? Listen, they're probably going to trade him if they get what they want. So if you look at the Green Bay and Dallas deal, Micah Parsons, the package Green Bay gave up for Parsons. I mean, now, would you do that? Are you giving up multiple, right? I mean, think about it. Multiple first-round draft picks? I got to be very careful when I'm doing that, especially with an edge rusher coming off an injury. The Raiders are going to look for 2 first-round draft picks. And that's a player that's 28, still young, but coming off an injury. Now, the Cowboys, think about what the Cowboys, what they could have got from Micah Parsons in August, but they chose not to go that route. And I'm going to give you a couple teams that I think could be in play for Maxx Crosby. I'm not going to dismiss the Philadelphia Eagles because no one should pick up the phone when Howie Roseman calls, Eagles GM. But Detroit, this is a major, major opportunity and a huge offseason for the Detroit Lions because Dan Campbell, to me, is under the microscope. They've got a window where they need to win now. Chicago is another team that I would throw out there. And I'll tell you another dark horse team, the Rams, that made it all the way to the NFC Championship. Now, they can turn around and give up a first rounder, a fifth rounder, and maybe give a player or two. And I think the Rams, the only reason I'm bringing the Rams into the fold, is because they know that Stafford is returning. So, hell, let's run it back. Let's run it back. So we're going to dive into those scenarios as well. 341, Lloyd Vance at 415. We're going to open up the comments. My man DB Handler, I'm glad you got that alert. Good job. See, that's what it's all about. You just got to get that little bell and the notification. Got some guys commenting on X, on Facebook as well. We're going to jump started on a Thursday edition of On Q. As always, we're powered by our wonderful friends over at Three Brooks Bourbon. Get ready with tea. Pliable. Played Again Sports, 2 locations, Deptford and Mount Laurel. And, of course, our very good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Check out the show notes on Q20, promo code, that's your savings. You will save on your first purchase. It's the only coffee that I drink, as you guys know. We got it chock full of, we got a little dark roast on the air on this Thursday. As the snow is starting to melt, I don't want to see that groundhog anymore. That's all I'm going to say. All right, we got some comments filtering in. NFL, Lloyd Vance at 415, some plays in the NBA. You guys on the other side as well. Keep it locked in. Thursday edition of On Q. We're cranking up right here in late February 2026. Quickie timeout. We'll be back on the other side. All right, 343 on a Thursday edition of On Q. Rich Quinones here. As I mentioned, you can get social with us. Very easy to do. At Rich Q on X and IG. TikTok, Rich Q on Mike. For the new subscribers to the YouTube channel, you guys are phenomenal. Greatly appreciate it. I know it's a Thursday, a little thank you Thursday, a little gracias on a Thursday. You guys have been subscribing. You are enjoying the content, and I am grateful for that and appreciate you guys getting locked in. Don't forget, too, we also take the audio, which is part of our RSS feed, and we kickstart that out as well. So you can get that on all major podcasting platforms, which a couple that we were working on soon to be announced as well. Oh, I didn't tell you this. How about PFF? Did you guys read the story? You know, we talked about this the other day with PFF. And, you know, wow. They hit the friggin' lottery. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. So right now, PFF, this is the newest. Well, if you're not familiar, well, you should be if you watch Sunday Night Football. It is basically the player performance tracking firm, right? And the majority owner, stakeholder in it, that has got the most equity in the bank, so to speak, is Chris Collingsworth. So the former wide receiver for Cincinnati, we know he's NBC Sports' lead NFL analyst. PFF is being sold. This is from Awful Announcing. Being sold to software and analytics company Teamworks. According to a report by Arif Hassan in his Wide Left Substack, Teamworks is reportedly paying between 130 and $140 million to acquire the company. Now, this is the same PFF that we talked about a couple weeks ago, the same PFF that had a problem, right? Or I should say, players and fans, more or less players that play currently in the NFL, and some former players have come out with a little disdain, that don't like the grading system because they don't watch film. They have absolutely no idea what plays and assignments are being called respectively. And one of the biggest critics is JJ Watt. And JJ Watt said this last season on McAfee's show. You can't break down a person's grade and know what they're supposed to do if you don't know their exact assignment. I know defensive line play unbelievably well. I could not go and grade a game for a player and give him a definitive grade without speaking to him, his coach, the scheme, everything. It's a fact. PFF has a ton of great stuff. Player grading sucks. Stop putting it out there. Now, everything JJ Watt is saying is 100% accurate, and I agree. It's got some really good stuff, but I also think it keeps some of these players in limbo, especially if these players towards the end of the season are looking to become free agents. They want their highest value at that point, right? You would suspect, you would think. So if I have someone coming on national TV with millions of eyeballs, because Sunday Night Football, you're capping off the weekend in football. Now, obviously, Monday Night Football is that standalone, but Sunday you get the 1 to 4, sometimes the London games, the overseas games at 9, and then you get, boom, the bookend. You bookmark the weekend with Sunday Night Football. And you might be footballed out. You might be chasing some bets. You might be hedging. You might be lucky and your team's playing 3 to 4 games during the season on primetime, in primetime. Sunday Night Football, maybe 1 or 2, okay? So you're going to be locked in. The players understand that because they're so visible, right? Because they push, promo, push prior to. But if I'm a player and I know I'm about to hit free agency, my contract's up, and I'm looking for a little bang for my buck, yeah, the last thing I want is someone who really doesn't understand offensive or defensive alignment, scheme adjustments to play at that moment, assignment, and you're grading me based on what? So it definitely hurts the players, I believe. Now, it does have some very good stuff, of course. I always go to PFF, but I also believe that it's not fair that these players are graded when, again, we really don't know what they're being graded on. It's very subjective. It's very easy for you and I to sit there and say, well, we can look at the player and he didn't tackle, he was out of a gap, missed his gap assignment, missed his block. Based on what? Because we're looking at a replay. I mean, we're all Monday morning quarterbackings, are we not? This is what we do, and we hedge after the fact. It's always after the fact. So I get exactly what Watt's saying, but man, talk about the money. Wow, unbelievable. And then conversely enough, with PFF and NBC, Tony Dungy's out Sunday Night Football. And quite frankly, he brought nothing to the table. I'm not a fan of Dungy at all. I'm not. And Jason Garrett's no better. I mean, Dungy's just, you kind of, it's almost like when you're watching these shows and they're on a Monday or a Tuesday or even Thursday back in the day, prime time, you had a great lineup, right? You had the Cosby Show, you had Night Court, you had Cheers, you had a great lineup. Then all of a sudden, we stick that show on Friday, where some shows go to die. When they start to isolate Dungy and he really didn't bring anything to the table, you just kind of have a feeling that he was done. And I'm also wondering too, I do like to, I don't want to say connect the dots, but I'm also curious. I don't think it sat well that Tony Dungy basically didn't give an honest answer when it came to Bill Belichick. He refused to say whether he voted for Belichick. Now, obviously, that was a couple weeks ago. He's out now. I don't know if this was something that was long-standing. I don't know if this is the elephant in the room. I don't know if this is the worst-kept secret. But if you watch Sunday Night Football, you realize the guy brought nothing to the table I'm also wondering, though, how much of this had to do with the fact that he declined to comment on whether he voted for Bill Belichick or not. And that was a big story. That was a big story. I mean, and credit where credit is due. Rodney Harrison, who I'm not the biggest fan of either, played under Belichick, won rings with the Pats, and basically said, hey, Tony, you got it wrong. You got it wrong. Now, the interesting thing is, Dungy, eventually addressed the elephant in the room. But what's interesting is he says, well, first of all, we don't know that they didn't get inducted into the Hall of Fame. I'm a voter. I have not heard who's in or who's out, so I'm not going to make a comment on it and speculate. We'll find out, I think, on Thursday who's in, who's out. But we know you're a voter, so just disclose it. Disclose it. Now, I get what he's trying to do. As a voter, he's trying to respect the Hall of Fame's procedures. But again, national figure, won a Super Bowl, you're on TV, and you're being asked by a former player who, oh, by the way, played under Belichick with the Pats. You got it wrong. Like, did you vote for him? Like, again, it's just, you start to connect the dots a little bit, and I just felt his time was going to be at an end regardless because he didn't bring anything to the table. He didn't. Tom in Summers Point on a Thursday chiming in. Q, there's absolutely no way the Rams and or the Bears make a move for Maxx Crosby. Why? Says who? Says who? I'm telling you. Says who? The Bears are a team, they believe that they can make a run. The Bears got a young quarterback, had a hell of a season, got some magic, turned what turned out to be a horrible 2 seasons ago into a wonderful run this past season with Williams in the ground game and the defense and Ben Johnson. So I can see the Bears, Chicago defense, here we go. And the Rams, listen, the Rams, as I mentioned, they got very lucky because once Matthew Stafford decides he's going to come back, the Rams have to understand this is it. We have to do everything in our power to try to get back to another Super Bowl while he's still here. They have a very good pass rush unit, right? You got Young, you got Fiske, you had Crosby. That now takes that pass rush to a whole new level. Now, if you go back, if you kind of document what they gave up, right? So they had 2 first-round picks, pick 13 and 29. So now they give up 13, maybe a 5th rounder, if not higher. And again, maybe you trade a guy like Kobe Durant, who's a pretty good corner, and that helps the Raiders secondary. Maxx Crosby's asking price is going to be through the roof. It really is. It's going to be through the roof. And as crazy as it sounds, I'm telling you, do not discount the Philadelphia Eagles because Howie Roseman, he's so sneaky. He really is. He's so sneaky. Now, they can figure out a way because he's a master when it comes to manipulating the numbers and contracts and the cap and salaries. I'm worried as a Giant fan that the Eagles are going to be hot and heavy over Crosby. I really am. I really am. We saw what the Eagles did at the trade deadline. They acquired Phillips from the Dolphins, right? Gangbusters, made a couple impact plays, or as you guys like to say, splash plays, whatever the hell that means, and then cooled off, right? You weren't gonna trade for Garrett because that was just Myles Garrett. That was just rumors being floated. He didn't get moved. Now here you go. You got Maxx Crosby. He's done with the Raiders. The Raiders are going to jack up the price. They got the leverage. If you really want him, here we go. And as the offseason is going to pick up steam, I can tell you right now, Maxx Crosby is, without a doubt, he's going to be the most talked about player in the offseason. He's an all-world, all-pro. He's trending towards a Hall of Fame career. He's 28. He's a game wrecker. And what do the Eagles do? The Eagles find this, they find a way to just be quiet, annoyingly quiet, and they just go about their business. And a team that we wouldn't suspect, we wouldn't think, we wouldn't even throw out there, boom, they come in and they make the, oh my God, are you effing kidding me type of move. That's what they do. The Raiders want no less than 2 first-round draft picks. Period. Because that's what the Cowboys got from Micah Parsons in August. That's what the Cowboys got, right? Again, with the bringing back Kenny Clark. That's what, the asking price. So, listen, I'm telling you right now, I would not turn my eye. And if this is what they do. This is what they do. I think the Eagles are going to be uberly aggressive. I think the Eagles understand they've got some young defensive players. They still have their offensive core intact, right? And I can tell you this. Listen, the one thing that Howie Roseman said after the trade deadline in 2025, when he was asked about Myles Garrett, and he noted, quote, won't live with regret when it comes to pursuing talented players. Now, if the reported price tag is high and he's worth it, then you have to have that conversation, because that's how good of a player he is. Yes, the Indiana Bears. Thank you for correcting me. Yes, correct. I have to get used to saying that eventually, which, oh, by the way, makes no sense. Do you realize the Bears have played in 2 stadiums their entire existence? And now you're going to take them away? Like, the Bears are meant to play in Soldier Field. They're meant to play in Soldier Field in Chicago. In Chicago. It's just weird thinking about that. It really is. All right, fast approaching 4 o'clock. Lloyd at about 10. Got some more comments rolling in. We will get through them on the other side. Keep it locked in. A Thursday edition of On Cue, powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off your first purchase on Cue. 20 Glenn. EHT. Absolutely no friggin' way the Eagles make a move for Crosby Q. It's not happening. The asking price is way too high. Again, opinions. Right? That's what it's all about at this moment. Valley 77. Hey, they probably kept Dungy too long. Collingsworth and Sims both have to go. Oh, Sam chimes in. Q, I think it's ridiculous they got rid of him. Vic chimes in. Q, listening to Dungy talk is like watching a paint dry. Old Hand chimes in. It's a shame he had quite the career in the NFL and broadcasting. Yeah, I don't know what the reason was. I mean, sometimes contracts are up. Sometimes, you get some of these hosts that side in one direction as opposed to the other. And I hate to say it, these networks, they've gone more political than sports talk. Just look at the mothership, look at the rat ship, look at what ESPN's doing. So they kind of they leave themselves open for this, right? I think sometimes when you have 4, 5, 6 guys at the panel, or 5 or 6 talking heads, it's way too much. It is. It's way too much. And someone can call this a shakeup, but he wasn't really adding anything to Football Night in America. He wasn't. Now, if you want to really kind of upset the apple cart here, what I believe is going to happen, once all-time greats retire, as soon as they retire, the next logical step is in the booth. Now, let's just say Travis Kelce retires. ESPN's going to be all over him. Fox is going to be all over him. And, NBC's going to be all over him. That almost makes sense. You bring in a guy like Kelce. Hell, you can even bring in a Belichick. I mean, Belichick is a football savant. You can ask Bill Belichick about a play in '89, special teams with the Giants, and he'll give you a 20-minute dissertation on special teams and why Renee Thompson is one of the all-time great special teams players. Like, you can go in so many different directions, right? You can go Fitzgerald. You can. There are a lot of guys out there, right? I don't know what's going to happen with Derek Carr, if he's going to come out of retirement or not. Hell, Kirk Cousins, if he doesn't find a home, maybe Kirk Cousins. You've got a lot of opportunities. Handler, if the Eagles think it puts them over the top, they make the move for Crosby. I believe, to your point, to your comment, right now, if you look around the NFL, you can never have too many pass rushers. Defense wins championships. Hell, we just saw it in the Super Bowl. We just saw it in the Super Bowl with Seattle. And their defense was historic. And they absolutely bombarded and overwhelmed Drake May and the New England Patriots. But man, that is like the rich getting richer, is it not? Because the Eagles, they are, for all the talent that they have, they are stacked. I mean, they really are. You got Carter and Davis. You got a high-ranked unit. You lost some veterans, right? But you've got rotating players. You got some stars in there. Hunt, Smith. I mean, they've got a hell of a defense. It's crazy to think the Eagles were that good. That good. Now, they weren't 13, 14, and 3 good, 11 and 6, but the talent that they have on that defensive side, Davis, Carter, Phillips, Bond, Dean, Smith, Jackson, right? I didn't even mention the younger players, DeJean, Mitchell. And now you add a Crosby? Are you kidding me? And I haven't even brought up their depth. You're talking about second and third tier guys. You can just roll them in. That's formidable. That would be scary. That would take them. They're definitely a odds on. They're one of the top 5 or 6 teams that should be a Super Bowl favorite heading in to 2026. I don't care what the odds say, but you add in a Crosby and that offense finally gets their you-know-what out of their hiney, then they're going to be dangerous. Mark and Wyatt for chimes in. Q, did you hear that Sirianni was the one that actually hired Mannion? Well, that tells me a couple things. And we talked a lot about this yesterday with Nick Sirianni for the Eagles fans. The fact that Nick Sirianni, if the Philadelphia Eagles, if reports are true, that Nick Sirianni brings in Sean Mannion, okay? And if the Eagles brass gave him carte blanche, if they said, go out and hire who you want, then the thought and the opinion, and really I'm speaking to myself, about Nick Sirianni being on the hot seat, maybe I'm not going to 100% walk it back, but maybe it's going to cool off a little bit. Only reason I bring it up is this. That's Jeffrey Lurie's way of saying, we are empowering you. We trust you to go out and hire the right guy. And if you're Sirianni, you've got to delegate and you've got to leave Sean Mannion alone until you don't. Okay? So Mannion's going to get a shot at calling plays. Sirianni is going to be the de facto kind of your supervisor manager. So it's almost like I'm steering clear. I'm steering clear. You got a 33-year-old. He's never been a coordinator. He's never been a play caller. He's got 2 years of NFL coaching experience. Here we go. That's a lot. You're balancing a lot of egos on that offensive side of the football, are you not? And I listened exactly what, Roseman said during the trade combine, talking about trade philosophy. Howie Roseman years ago, people were getting ready to run Howie Roseman out of town. They were getting ready to run Roseman out of town. And the biggest mistake that the Philadelphia Eagles made, which actually turns out to be a blessing in disguise, the fact that they hired Chip Kelly. So think about this for a moment. The Philadelphia Eagles turn around, they think outside the box, they hired Chip Kelly in 2013. And it was all about the quack, quack, quack. It was the fast-paced offense. Here we go, 10-6, 2013 NFC title, NFC East title. They lose to the Saints in a wild card game. And then he turns around and now let me start trading players, right? LaShawn McCoy, get out of here. Deshaun Jackson, you have, quote, gang ties, get out of here. So all of a sudden, 26-21, overall fired in 2015. But during that time, they basically gave Chip Kelly the keys to the castle. And it was almost like a demoted Howie Roseman. If you think about the holidays, you got the kids' table and the adults' table. Howie was with the adults, and all of a sudden, he got delegated to the kids' table, hanging out with the pain in the ass nieces and nephews. Now, the hire itself was a bad hire, but it was a blessing in disguise because it humbled Howie Roseman. And all of a sudden, he decided, I need to get back to what I'm doing best, and that's being a numbers cruncher. You get rid of Chip Kelly, you bring in Doug Peterson, the rest is history. They eventually got rid of Doug, they bring in Sirianni, but they won 2 Super Bowls since that Kelly debacle nonsense. So it does factor in when you're thinking about the Eagles and, the fact that Howie Roseman knows exactly what the hell he's doing. That's why I believe, and some of you guys have chimed in already and argued with me, and I'm okay with that. I believe they're going to be a serious player for Maxx Crosby if the asking price is right. That's all. If the asking price is right, man, what's going on? All right, 4 o'clock straight up, loitering about 5. Quick timeout. Got a lot more comments coming in. Anthony Richardson, what's out at Indy? I told you PFF looks like it's going to be for sale or sold for $130. Dungy out at NBC. Not a problem there. You got the Jets and the Titans with a trade. I got some comments from yesterday that I wanted to read off as well regarding some of these quarterbacks I put under a microscope as long as you guys are okay with some of these goofy comments. Also, I gave you 4 to 5 teams that I think are in trouble heading into 2026. All right, NFL Talk powered by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clements Bridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey, and of course, second location in Mount Laurel. Lloyd in about 10 minutes. All right, 4:05 on a Thursday edition of On Q. Rich Quinones here. As always, appreciate you guys tuning us in. Get social with me on X and IG at Rich Q on Q, TikTok, Rich Q on a mic. Like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And as Handler found out, Hit the bell, the notifications. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. It's a Thursday. Lloyd Vance in a couple minutes. So we started to talk a little bit about some of these big names potentially being moved during the off season with the NFL Combine right here. League year, calendar year officially starts. You got the NFL Draft. We talked a lot about some of these bridge quarterbacks that I felt were still in flux. But I also believe there were a couple bridge quarterbacks I think you can actually get away and kind of prolong their career. Like I believe right now, Kyler Murray is almost like a reclamation project. You just got to figure out if he's going to be all in, right? You also, listen, Daniel Jones is on the move probably again. I can see that happening, right? I don't know if Indianapolis is going to invest a substantial amount of money in Jones coming off another major injury. Then you've got, who else is out there? Willis. I don't believe he's a $35 million quarterback. No way. I just can't see it. Tua, I think Tua right now is going to be hard pressed to find a job in the NFL as a starter. Jose in Clearwater channels in on X. Hashtag on Q. Thank you very much. Q, I saw that my Miami Dolphins ranked first. Who ranked last in the NFLPA team report cards? That was the Steelers. And from what I read, Jose, it was the field conditions. If that's the case, the Giants should be right there because that feels horrible. That's horrible. Horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Miami, apparently, all the players loved how the organization was run. Okay. Still crazy when you think about it because some of these teams that grade really well, they're not the best franchises. When you're talking about, talent on the field and winning football games. Cousins to the Jets, I think that's too easy to say. If I'm the Jets, I would not make a move for Kirk Cousins. I wouldn't. I would go younger. I'm not going to tell you that they should pay Malik Willis $30 million, but it seems to be that right now, this kid that has a handful of games under his belt is arguably the hottest free agent, the hottest player right now in free agency. Now, I'm also wondering, does that then poke Green Bay into, well, wait a second. We don't, knowing Jordan Love gets banged up, we don't want to get rid of this kid. And the Titans are probably kicking themselves, right? But that's how you have to look at it sometimes. You're going to give up a young quarterback. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Well, if that's the case, then you can make an argument for Richardson. I don't believe so. I don't think Anthony Richardson is an NFL quarterback. I don't think Anthony Richardson is going to be a starter in the NFL ever again. It was a reach. I know he's young, but it was a major, major reach and a bad draft pick at number 4 overall in 2023, knowing that this kid had a handful of games in Florida. He just can't stay healthy. He's too inconsistent, and he might be that Trey Lance, Justin Fields backup going forward. Trey Lance, think about the move that the 49ers did when they drafted Trey Lance. That didn't work out, and he's been bounced around 3 or 4 teams. I think that's going to be Anthony Richardson. Unfortunate, young kid. We saw the quarterback can play in Indianapolis with Daniel Jones, and they were 8-2, and they also ran the football and got protection with the offensive line. So to answer your question, to me, if I'm the Jets, I would go after Malik Willis because he's young. So you're talking upside. We're talking youth. Like Kirk Cousins, you already know what you're going to get out of Kirk Cousins. Now, Anthony Richardson is 22, 23. Malik Willis is 26. But I've seen a nice little sample size from Malik Willis that, okay, I think in the right system, the right scheme, the right fit. It seems as though every team is talking about this kid. So there's got to be some. The more teams are high on a potential player, potential free agent, right? Then that only helps their leverage and it helps Green Bay. Well, it doesn't help Green Bay because he's a free agent, but you know what I'm saying. If they were to trade him, yes. But it helps his kids leverage. So now you're talking me up, you're talking me up, you're talking me up. My value is going up exponentially. Exponentially. So he's put himself in the right situation. Now, can we sit there with the utmost confidence and say this kid's going to be an all-pro? I don't know. Sample size, sample size, sample size. 4 games. 4 games. And we saw he played in 7 last year and he played in a handful with the Titans. Now, was that enough? Was that enough to make you think, man, this kid can play a little bit? Or are we going to get giddy over the last game of the season where he threw close to 300 yards? And he had 3 touchdowns, 2 on the ground with his legs. We value these guys very high, very fast, right? We're doing that. If I'm a Jet, I'm not looking for upside. I'm merely looking for 1 year to next draft. Yeah, but here's the thing: you're not going to sign him for a league minimum, and you're not going to sign him on a 1 year deal for $30 million. If that's, you're going to lock him in for a couple seasons. You're going to lock him in for 3 or 4 years. Like you might go 4 years at $120. He is your starter. Period. You are tied to him over the next 4 years. There's absolutely Raider Jack chiming in from Delaware. Q, I don't want Mendoza. You're foolish. All right, you're going to trade the pick down. That's fine, but you need a quarterback. If the Raiders, for some God knows what, decide to bypass Mendoza and don't trade back and just bypass Mendoza and go, I don't know, go the edge rusher from Miami at the top overall draft pick. You know what's going to hit the floor down there in Vegas. Then the Jets are going to be sitting there saying, well, we don't have to worry about a quarterback now. We got our guy. This is why it's so important to watch what happens over the next couple of weeks, because sometimes teams understand they're not going to get a crack at a quarterback. Aside from Mendoza, who is clearly the best quarterback in the draft, clearly the best quarterback coming out. His numbers speak for themselves. 3,600 yards, 41 touchdowns, led Indiana, unbelievable season, winning the national championship game. Everyone said they weren't going to be able to do it, and they did. They were brilliant. They had an unbelievable season. Name me a quarterback remotely as skilled as this kid that you can find top, I don't know, 35. Because I don't see right now, if you think about it, who would that be? Ty Simpson? Maybe the 34th, 35th best quarterback. I'm sorry, 34th, 35th draft pick. Like there's no one else in the first round. That's my point. So if you're the Raiders, you know you're drafting him. You're not going to miss the boat on that. If you're the Jets, you had an opportunity to get the number 1 overall draft pick. It didn't work out for you. Now you got to think a bridge does not save Aaron Glenn's job. A bridge quarterback does not save his job. It doesn't. It doesn't. So you got to go young. You have to. And that could be a Willis. I just don't know if I'm paying him the type of money. I mean, hell, his stock's going up big time. God bless him. You know whose stock is also rising? My guy, Lloyd Vance. I mean, this guy, not only, I feel like I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks because back your play, we got through the Super Bowl. Now all of a sudden you're continuing doing Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. The snow was tumbling. You're calling wrestling matches. I mean, you're all over the place, brother. How are you?
Doing great, Q. With a lot going on this time of year, man.
You got a lot going on. Yeah, you definitely got a lot going on. All right, let's fire off. Don't forget Lloyd every Monday, 8 to 9 on SR 1029 FM The Game. Tulsa Sports Digital Network. I mentioned this at the start. Maxx Crosby, obviously, it's a big name out there. He wants out of Vegas. I gave 4 or 5 teams: the Rams, Baltimore, Chicago. But man, I'm telling you, I really feel as though that one annoying team that's so quiet and just goes about their business, and then all of a sudden, here we go. The Philadelphia Eagles come in and they give up a couple first round draft picks because Howie knows how to do what Howie knows how to do. and the Eagles land Maxx Crosby. First and foremost, do you believe he will get moved?
Well, Q, you said the operative thing in terms of the picks. I think it is going to take a Khalil Mack type of trade where it's two number ones and some change, maybe a throw-in player for this to get done. But right now, John Spytek, the general manager with the Raiders, Clint Kubiak, who's coming over there to be the head coach, they want Maxx Crosby on a team. But if somebody comes with a good offer, Q, and they can use those as building blocks for, let's face it, a team that's pretty bad. They won 3-14 last year. Uh, they got to listen. So they're all in the same place this week. It's like an NFL convention out there in Indy. All the GMs are there. A lot of the new coaches are
Yep.
there, and they're talking business. So it could happen, but I lean towards. I don't think another team is going to give all that value for Crosby. 10 sacks last year, dominant player, but it's just they love their draft picks. So a lot of teams are going to hold on, keep him close to the vest, and we'll see if he holds out or if it comes a situation like that.
Yeah, kind of the adage you don't throw away the baby with the bathwater with the Philadelphia Eagles. But I feel as though they're looking around the rest of the NFL and they saw exactly what just won a Super Bowl, and that was predicated on defense, courtesy of the Seattle Seahawks. And the Eagles have a very good pass rush. And you're now talking about adding in a player of Crosby's caliber. That to me makes them an odds on favor coming out of the NFC. Even the Rams. Now, I think the Rams are a little more plausible because I think the Rams announcing Matthew Stafford coming back really changes their plans, right? Because if Stafford decided to retire, okay, you're kind of in limbo. Maybe with the talent you have, you might want to bring in a Kirk Cousins for a year or two and try to get a deep run. But with Stafford coming back at the level that he played, the MVP level, and their defense, that can be a team that I think maybe is willing to give up or part ways with a couple first round draft picks. I mean, either or. I think if the offer's there, the Raiders are going to entertain the offer. It doesn't matter who's calling; they just want what they want.
Yeah, and getting to the Rams, they have two first round picks, Q. They got pick 13, which is Atlanta's pick, and then they have their own. So,
Correct.
which is late in the 20s, 30. So yeah, they have the weaponry if they want to make that deal. It could happen. And the Eagles, it's going to be interesting to see if they decide to go first to sign Jalen Phillips, their own
Right.
free agent. He's on the table. They got to get him done, or bring him back, but it's going to be tough. But they have a lot of free agents. I was looking at the Eagles roster in terms of that defense. You talk about pass rush. Phillips, free agent.
Yep.
Aguilar, a free agent.
Yep.
Brandon Graham's a free agent who they think is not going to come back. So they got to figure all this out. And it could make sense for them to say, all right, rather than go to a draft where you're not sure what you're getting from one of these young guys, put the deal together to get Crosby in the door.
Well, look, because they also, like you said, they got to pay young players. I mentioned some of these quarterbacks: Cousins, a bridge, Murray, Tua, Fields. Then you got Malik Willis, and his stock is just evidently rising with a handful of games under his belt in the NFL, 2 seasons with the Titans, and then obviously coming on with a handful of games with Green Bay and spelling love when he got hurt. I read that the asking price, what he's looking at as a free agent is 30 to 35 million a year. I mean, I can't wrap my head around that. I'm sorry, not for a handful of games.
Yeah, that's just the market we're talking about in terms of these quarterbacks. And
I know,
it's
I
crazy
know.
because you have Dak Prescott with that $60 million a season contract out there. And then those other quarterbacks you name, whether it's Tua, whether it's Kyler Murray, these were bad decisions. And now the team's kind of, an albatross with these
Murray's due
guys.
42 million, Lloyd. Murray's due 42 million.
Yeah, so they can't cut them because it's a huge dead cap hit, and they want building blocks for these new head coaches. But it's a situation where it's like, oh man, what are they going to do? They may have to just eat it, a la what Denver did with Russell Wilson, because if they really don't want to bring the quarterback like Kyler Murray, he has not been in touch with the front office. They seem to there's a huge disconnect there. I don't even know if he's going to show up to the mini camps and the OTAs. So it's like,
Well, you know
just
why
cut the
it's
cord
over.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's run dry, right? I mean, they're pressing the reset button because they fired Jonathan Gannon, they hired Mike LaFleur. The split to me is inevitable. I think when he was benched, Brissett was more effective, right? And as I mentioned, 42.5 million in 2026. Now, here's the thing. Uh, Arizona will likely have to take on some of that money if they're going to try to facilitate any type of deal. Kyler Murray's 29. I think he has trade value given the lack of talent at the position um, come April. Because we just know Mendoza is the guy to the Raiders at number one. I'm not high on any of these potential lower tier, mid level quarterbacks, the Ty Simpsons of the world coming out. So I think Murray provides some depth, that bridge, if you will. Like, for instance, if you're the Jets, knowing that Aaron Glenn is pretty much a dead man walking, they just made a trade again today. They traded away another high draft pick and a defensive player to the Titans. If you're the Jets, do you go the bridge route or do you go the Malik Willis 4 for $130 and we're married to him for 4 years?
I think the Jets are going to go the bridge move Q. You know, it's a
And how does
situation
that
where,
help a coach that we know is on the hot seat?
yeah, they're not going to help them a lot because there's just not a lot there in terms of the draft. I heard you talking about some of the other quarterbacks coming out in this group. You know, it's Mendoza, and then you have a bunch of also-rans. You know, Drew Allard coming back from an ankle injury. You have Kay Klubnik, who really never lived up to expectations. You know, Carson Beck, and it's just a a bad group. And I think a lot of people, in terms of the talent next year, Q, I started looking ahead to 2027 draft. Uh, there's going to be a lot of guys jockeying to get in position to get some of these players. You know, Arch Manning, Trendon Chambliss, he went back to Ole
That's
Miss. You
right.
have Dante Moore from Oregon, and there's a bunch of other quarterbacks that are coming out. So it's a much stronger class. And I think in the end, when you look at the Jets, they feel like it's a couple year rebuild. The way they're kind of putting this thing together, it's just not going to be a quick turnaround for them.
So when you say if it's a couple year rebuild, do you believe that Aaron Glenn, if they do struggle with a bridge quarterback, are they more inclined to move on from Aaron Glenn? Or, well, we understand transition, you go from Fields to now a bridge. Uh, you know, I don't know. I think they're in a really precarious position because they hired the wrong guy. I mean, Aaron Glenn is not he's not an NFL head coach, and they're also married to him through 2029, right? So I know you don't want to give up on a guy after 1 year, but 3-13, right? Or I should say 3-14, however many games they lost. Um, they showed you nothing defensively late. They went through quarterbacks. Offensively, there was no rhyme or reason. Are you more inclined to keep him with a bridge or a guy like Willis where, okay, if you got 3 years left on your contract, Aaron Glenn, we're going to give you 3 years with this kid that we just signed for four?
Yeah, I think in the end, the handwriting's a wall with Aaron Glenn in terms of his staff. Q, you know, he got rid of his coordinators and tried to rebuild that situation, but it's just not working. So they're going to bring him back. They didn't want to have that one and done egg on their face, but as you were saying, it's just not looking good. I think they're just going to kind of go with whatever quarterbacks kind of left out there. I think Malik Willis, uh, they're not just going to have the cap room and the money to throw at him to kind of make him not look at some of these other places where he can kind of have a much better landing spot. Because let's face it, the Jets, it's almost like mission impossible at this point. We'll see them probably bring back Brees Hall, but not make many more changes. Interesting thing is they're still playing Justin Fields. Q. He's under contract into next season. They got to figure out what to do with him. But just a lot of bad decisions by the Jets, and you know, it's between them and the Browns for the mismanagement award around the National Football League.
Well, speaking of the Browns, there's no guarantee that Shador Sanders is going to be under center week one. And they've come out and said, hey, it could be an open competition between Shador Sanders and Deshaun Watson. And I still maintain the reason that that's even brought up is because of um, the guaranteed money for Deshaun Watson. They got to figure out, can they get something right? Um, Back their return on their investment.
Yeah, it's cute. It's funny when I first started writing everything. I remember old, you know, guy that been around the scene for a long time. He said, "Follow the money," and it often in sports it happens that way, And I just think with the Browns, you have Jim Haslam laid out all that money. That's $264 million guaranteed contract. I think next year the cap hit for the Browns is 80 some million. They can't afford to have Deshaun Watson on the bench. I mean, it's a sunk cost. So they're like, all right, why not see what they can do with him? And I'm sure Todd Monken was like, yeah, I can try to, acclimate him in there and see what we can do. But the thing is about Watson, he just has not been the same guy since 2020. You know what I mean? So it's just a no-win situation there for the Browns.
I know you and I have been talking about this over the last several years with Anthony Richardson. I mean, it was a reach and a half handful of games with Florida, and then the Colts draft him number 4 overall. Look, he's going to seek a trade. I mean, is there a market for Anthony Richardson, or is he going to be in that Trey Lance, Justin Fields type of conversation where he'll be just pretty much a journeyman backup?
Yeah, Q, I think if he is going to be traded, it'd be for a day three type pick, maybe fifth round or higher. Another team will take a flyer on him. As always, they're going to look at the talent, coming out of Florida. And he didn't have enough starts, in my opinion, coming out for where he was drafted. But some GM or some coach would say, okay, let's bring him into the system, see if we can make this work. But in the end, I do think he's going to be a journeyman type of guy. He's not going to be in the NFL long. So this is his season to make good, but I don't think it's going to be in Indianapolis.
It's just the overvaluation or the bad evaluation of the quarterbacking position. I mentioned yesterday, I brought up 5 teams that I believe are going to be under the microscope, and I want a word or two reaction from you
Sure.
heading into the offseason 2026. The first, Buffalo Bills. I believe the window. I mean, if it's not shut completely, there's a little draft, and grandmom's coming in, and she's just she's a little chilly, and she's about to shut it close for good.
Yeah, the Peculiars who own that team, they blame Sean McDermott, kicked them out the door. So uh, they're putting all their eggs in Josh Allen's basket, but he needs some help there. So that's what I would say. They need some help. But right now, Q, yeah, I would agree with you. Not much time left for them. They got to figure this thing out real quick.
Dallas Cowboys, Chris Carter came out and said, "Whoa, whoa! If you're Dak, you got to do exactly what Kansas City did with that Mahomes contract." But I also believe this is it for Dak Prescott in Dallas. I mean, this is to me, it's just it's. I feel like it's going on for 20 something years. We know the last time they made it to a Super Bowl one, it was '95. But I just, if not now, when for the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, it's interesting, Q. They had all those offensive weapons and all those
Yep.
stats. And, it's Jerry Jones in terms of building his own fantasy football type team. They're bringing George Pickens back. I don't know how they're going to fit him in with that CD Lamb contract. They got Javante Williams. Uh, they signed. So, we're going to see how this works out in terms of Dak Prescott's contract. I don't see him giving any money back. But, yeah, Dallas, I don't see them contending anytime soon. They got to fix that defense.
All right. Now I'll give you my other three. I know we talk about them all the time, but I still think the Philadelphia Eagles. I mentioned this before, Lloyd. If if Howie Roseman or if Jeffrey Lurie gave Nick Sirianni the green light to go out and hire who he wants on his coaching staff, i.e., Sean Mannion, then that's either okay. If it fails this time, you're going to be out, or we only allowed this because we really trust you and believe you're an elite head coach. Oh, by the way, which the owner has said on multiple occasions. So I think this is a huge offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles, knowing how everything kind of just kind of fell through the cracks, especially late in the season.
Yeah, Q, this is a huge season for the Eagles, and it's one where there's change in the air. They got to figure out what they're doing with A.J. Brown. You have Stalin leaving with the offensive line. They are getting Dickerson back and Lane Johnson, but at this point in career, which Lane Johnson are you getting? Jalen Hurts, how's he going to gel with Sean Mannion? And then I talked about all those free agents on defense. So just a lot of swirling around this Philadelphia Eagles, and yeah, it's going to be up to Roseman to see how to fix the situation and get this team back to Super Bowl contention.
Does AJ Brown get moved?
Been back and forth on this one, and I think it's going to take somebody bringing the number one pick to the Philadelphia Eagles to make him leave. But I think if the Eagles, they are listening to offers because I think enough's enough. I think he's been locker room distraction, and I think a lot of it revolves around Jalen Hurts. I think there's just some kind of fracture between him and AJ Brown, and they may want to get Brown out the door. So around the draft, keep your ear to the ground, and definitely you may hear rumblings that the Eagles may be moving AJ Brown.
All right, last two teams, Baltimore Ravens. I mean, we talk about Buffalo, the window of opportunity, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. You got a hell of a tight end. That's a good team. They need to figure out defensively. Now you move on from Harbaugh. You bring in Minter. I just think, listen, if you're going to contend in the AFC North, we don't know what Cincinnati is. They're very inconsistent. Cleveland has issues. Pittsburgh bringing back Aaron Rodgers. No, thank you. It's got to be there for Baltimore.
Yeah, to cost them Minter, they got to figure out more playmakers on the offensive side of the football in terms of receiver position, helping out Lamar Jackson. Jackson, I'm hearing they're going to restructure his contract and give him an extension that may pay him just under, what Prescott's being paid. So that's going to be a huge contract and affect all their decisions. You talk about window closing. Derrick Henry is getting a little up there in age, and Minter has a lot of work to do with that defense because they gave up a ton of yards and points last year.
And then lastly, Houston. The GM came out and said, listen, any thought of trading the quarterback is absolutely absurd, but he didn't play well in the playoffs, and when the GM comes out and says we're going to stand by CJ Stroud, that's great until they're 1-5 and he's struggling and they're contemplating benching him.
Yeah, Q, I was wondering about this one because they usually get off to a slow start every year, and you wonder is
They
it
did
going to be?
again last year, yeah.
Yeah, and you wonder if it's going to be a continuance from the playoffs where Stroud was just ineffective. So Casario is going to say all the right stuff at the GM position. Aaron D'Amico Ryan's going to say Stroud's their guy, but they drafted him, and in the last couple of seasons he's been an underachiever. So definitely there's a microscope on it. I don't think they'll trade him, but they'll definitely maybe bring in a developmental quarterback or somebody to push him a little bit.
I mean, how about this? They started 3-5. They had to rip off 9 straight to make the playoffs, 12-5.
Yeah, and that defense was just tremendous with Will Anderson Jr. and the rest of those guys, and they
What's your
carried them.
biggest, yeah, what's your biggest story or storylines heading into the offseason that I'm sure you've been talking about a lot on your show or will be talking about a lot on your show?
Yeah, obviously it's the off season, so everybody's getting ready for the league year to start in a couple days. After the combine or so, it's March 11th and free agency. So we want to see where Willis is going to land and all these other free agents. Somebody's going to the tampering period is going to start soon. So you're going to see a Trey Henderson kind of sign somewhere. A lot of teams are looking to bring back their original guys, and I think Daniel Jones may be one of them. I think he's going to get a contract from the Colts. They believe in him.
Really, I actually think I was a little only because of his injury history.
Yeah, it's crazy that they're, especially as Achilles right now, you just don't know when he's going to be available. But it seems like he's their guy, and they're going to give him a deal. So, free agency is huge, and I want to see if they're going to bring back Jones, but also Alec Pierce. He had such a big year last year, and a lot of teams need a receiver.
Did you see that PFF is? I believe it has been sold, or let me see. There is a sale moving forward. Pro Football Focus. It's going to go to analytics company Teamworks, and apparently it's going to be sold for between 130 and 140 million to acquire the company. Now, this is something I've talked about over the years. The grading on Sunday Night Football. JJ Watts had a thought. A lot of players have a thought on this. I think it has some good information, but I've always maintained if I'm a free agent, the last thing I want mid to late in the season, especially if I'm struggling, to have my grade out there, right? Because it's going to crush my value either way. Now, if I'm ripping through and all of a sudden, I can move up a little bit from what I gather and those that I've spoken to, once those grades are pretty much set, for the most part, they're pretty consistent throughout the season. So it's not like a demonstrative jump up or, a precipitous drop, if you will.
Yeah, and those ratings are subjective. I know they're going to say they have their
Yeah,
analysts
yeah,
out there, but these aren't guys that played the game, not former offensive line coaches per se, or positional coaches. And the PFF was actually it's owned by Collinsworth
that's right.
and some
Which is
guys.
a conflict of interest.
So he's getting a payday there, and some I talked to a lot of the older guys and a lot of the veteran coaches and scouts out there. They're like, well, I use my eyeballs. You know what I mean? I don't use
Yeah.
analytics and math equations. I just kind of know if a guy can play or not. And a lot of times I haven't agreed with some of the PFF ratings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes yes, and other times, you got to watch yourself with some of these gradings. But all right. What do you got later on? I guess over the weekend. You doing any more wrestling?
Yeah, we have the in southeastern PA where I am. They got the big regional where everybody is fighting to go to states. The state tournament is in Hershey, so I'll be commentating those matches on
Now is that on
Friday and
YouTube? Lloyd?
Saturday. Yeah, it'll be on actually the YouTube for the high school where I do everything at WOHS, which is the Oxford Area High School website. The live stream last week was extremely popular. I'm learning. Yeah, I think of you because I'm doing play by play, and it's just like, oh man, sometimes the action's so quick. You know what I mean? You're almost like, ooh, you got to catch your breath, but it's a lot of fun, and we're right there at the mat and
Oh, nice.
calling out, yeah, and the kids, they're high school kids, so they get excited about it,
That's
and
awesome.
I got a
No,
good feedback from some of them.
no, that's great. I mean, I have the fight Saturday remote, but what time is this on Saturday afternoon?
We'll we'll get started about 9:30 on Saturday, and then it'll probably run into the evening, probably about 6:30, 7 o'clock.
Ah,
The
I'll lock
finals.
in, man. I'll be doing some prep work. I'll lock in, man. I'll be texting you on the air, man. I'll tell you to wave at me, give me a shout out on the air.
There we go, Q.
All right, brother. We'll do it again next week, and we got to start cranking up off-season needs, breaking down the divisions like we typically do. Combine draft right around the corner. We got a lot of football to break down, but I always appreciate you making time, and we'll definitely check you out on Saturday, brother. Thank you.
All right, Q. Thanks for having me on.
All right, there you have it, my guy, Lloyd Vance. Look at that. Lloyd knows football, and he does a phenomenal job. I've checked out some of the wrestling. All right, quick timeout. Then we'll come back. We'll close it up on the other side. All right, good stuff from Lloyd. Appreciate him jumping on board for a couple of moments. By the way, new edition of Double Jab podcast is out. That's also available on the YouTube channel. Super Manaway Rising star Javon Woodard joined me. He's got a fight coming up March. He's ranked 20th in the country. Phenomenal fighter, unbelievable amateur background. We'll also drop a new edition of Overseas Dimes tomorrow from a Fully Feared BC that just won Warriors League. Caleb Singleton, a ridiculous sharpshooter, is going to join me. So we'll put that out as well on the YouTube channel. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. We're back in the saddle tomorrow on a What the Frig Friday edition of On Cue. We'll continue the NFL talk. We'll get you caught up to speed on what's going on in the NBA. And we're going to start getting into a little MLB with the baseball season right around the corner. Appreciate Lloyd Vance jumping on board. You guys with the comments, as always. Keep us locked in on social media at RichQ on Q, X and IG, TikTok RichQ on the mic. We're powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee, Three Brooks Bourbon. Get ready with tea. Play it again, sports. Everyone have a wonderful Sports Thursday. We'll be back in the saddle manana on a Friday. Until then, I'm Rich Quinones. Be safe, be sound. Appreciate you guys tuning into this edition of On Cue. And as always, hasta luego, buen día.